I'd like to welcome our panel and also viewers to an ESSA expert panel as part of the ESSA project. ESSA is a Erasmus-funded project which is for the European Software Skills Alliance, and it aims to help develop skills in software development and related industries. Now, I'm very pleased tonight to have three panelists. And this talk has a difference. In the Warsaw School of Computer Science, we've already run a panel like this, but that panel was with Polish IT workers. But Poland, especially Warsaw, as well as other parts of Europe, Berlin leaps to mind immediately, as well as Amsterdam, also has a lot of expatriate IT workers, especially from outside the European Union. So it's with pleasure I'd like to introduce our three panelists, who I hope will give an interesting and perhaps different view on how software skills looks than maybe people who are in the EU. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Yuvarani Alango. She's from Malaysia and she works in the engineering sector. I'd like to also introduce Adriano Oliveira, and he's from Brazil, and he works as a machine learning engineer in the banking sector. And finally, is John Summers, who's from the United Kingdom, and he works as a Scrum Master in the medical data sector.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, great. Now, just to quickly introduce myself, I'm Dr. Andrew Chewson. I'm a lecturer at the Warsaw School of Computer Science. But I also, previous to that, I worked in the UK in higher education for, well, a long time. And one of the things I was heavily involved in was the software skills debate in the United Kingdom as well. So I'm very interested in hearing what you all have to say. So with that out of the way, what I'd like to do is to first ask Yuvarani, could you quickly just tell us how you came to be working as an IT professional in Europe?
It all started when I was actually working with my dad because he had a partner company with this company. So I already decided to become a programmer back when I was in school. The reason was because it's a stable job. So I joined my dad, and that's how I started to know my colleagues, and I started doing a lot of projects, and our team was getting a lot of good names for the project that we delivered. But coming to Europe was not easy because normally European companies, they don't, not all European companies like to welcome foreigners because it's a lot of hassle for them. They have to do their work permit, have to spend a lot. So my company was not very happy to do that. So for many years I wanted to come, but I had no chance to come. And then suddenly I made my own initiative. So I know that Poland allows you to study while working. So I applied my own study visa, and then I came here and asked my company again, will you please hire me? And I was working for many years here, so they hired me.
Okay, thank you very much for that summary of how you got here. Adriano, could you tell us a bit about your story into becoming an IT professional in Europe?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Europe comes later in that picture. I was working as an IT professional already in Brazil before moving into Poland. And I first came to Poland due to family reasons. My wife, she's Polish, and we decided to move to Poland to build our lives here. And initially, I was working for a Brazilian company still remotely back then. And when I decided to do my next career move, I decided that it could be interesting working for a local company. And since I'm here, I thought it was the best way to find a job here, and that's how it came.
Could I just ask a supplementary question? Because I'm aware that you were a software engineer before you moved into machine learning engineering. When did that transition happen? And briefly, why did you make it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I started my career working for a company that did a SaaS service that was heavily based on machine learning already, and that's where I acquired my first machine learning skills. And once when I tried to see myself in the job market, I noticed that it could be good to have some sort of specialization. And I felt that machine learning was a somewhat natural continuation for my career. So that's how I specialized and invested training and eventually got a job.
Okay, well, we'll probably come back to that later when we talk about upskilling and skills development. But thanks for that, and the context was really good. Now, John, if I may ask you, how did you come to be working as an IT professional in Poland?
I actually had a slightly different route to Poland. I had a period of, you could say, nomadic wandering and travel around the world in my late 30s. And when that drew to a close, I decided to continue with my IT career. And the two places I considered were Warsaw and London, because I had friends in each place, and I knew that each place had a good supply of IT jobs. And I weighed up a number of factors, and in terms of certain lifestyle attributes, Warsaw was ahead of London for me. And also, although the salaries were on paper higher in the United Kingdom, when I factored in aspects like costs of living, how close to the center an average developer in an average development job could afford to live, things like that, I found, to my surprise, that in terms of real wealth, in terms of lifestyle, like what kind of lifestyle you would enjoy, not your paper salary, that I would be far richer in Warsaw than in London. So I settled here without having a job, and then I started to look for a job, and quite easily found my first one, as the job market was quite dynamic.
Yeah, it's also just worth noting for context here that both myself and John, if I'm correct, arrived during the Brexit transition period. So we had EU equivalent working rights at that point. So we didn't need visas, although we had to do a fair amount of bureaucracy.
Yeah, and I can't make any guarantees about those like standard of living assessments anymore, because many years and many world events have passed since I made those decisions.
Yeah. Okay, so thanks. Now, can I ask you just a quick supplementary question, John?
Yep.
If I recall correctly, you started off your career working in software development.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you now work as a Scrum Master.
Yeah.
How did you make that transition? Because on the face of it, they require very different skill sets.
Yeah, they're very different roles, but you know, in the same workshop, so to speak. I think I was a Java dev, backend mainly, server side, for more than 10 years. It's more, the shift isn't so hard to do. You know, if you have the right personality. You know, what I realized was, like, one day the puzzling over the code and working out the algorithmic problems, debugging lines of code, stopped pushing my buttons and stopped being so interesting to me, and started to seem like a chore. Whereas observing the mechanics of how the team operated and how the flow of work was running through the project and how people were communicating with each other started to interest me more and more. And that was what led me to think, actually, maybe it's time that I do what I always dreaded and look at some form of team leading, project management, scrum master, agile coach, engineering manager.
Yeah, and it's not unusual across say a 40-year, 50-year career to reinvent yourself. I worked as a consultant and interim for a while in the UK after I left my UK academic job. So yes, I can fully understand that. Now, just want to give a bit of context to people outside Poland before I ask the next question, because if you came to Poland 5 years ago, the IT job market was really hot. You couldn't get enough coders.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite straightforward to enter. If you're competent, you'd easily find work. Now, John will probably remember quite well the dot-com boom, the Y2K boom, and the crashes in the UK. Mm-hmm. This hasn't happened in Poland. There's not been a crash. It's been like an overinflated balloon that's slowly deflating at the moment, hopefully to a more sensible level. But what happened, and I'm sure John, and that you may be able to relate to your own maybe in Brazil and Malaysia, when you've had change ups and downs in the job market, the skills that people need change as well. Yeah. What employers ask me. So this is the reason I'm saying this, because I want to transition into the first question, which is, in your view and from where you're standing, what do you think is going to be the need for training and education for software professionals in the next 5 years? John, could I start with you?
Yeah, sure. But could I counter with a clarification question, please?
Please go ahead.
And ask the need for whom? The need for by employers and industry, or the need by people looking for jobs?
That's a very good clarification. To a certain extent, the scope of this panel would cover both, but I think first, answer it from the point of view of people looking for work.
Okay. Right, I'm glad that you picked the second one, because I personally think employers, I'm a born cynic, and I think employers aren't very interested in training. They're looking for people who are ready to go, usually. However, people that are looking for work are very interested in getting trained to do that work. So over the next 5 years, how would I view the need for training? I would say it's going to continue to increase, very much so, with people will want to move into certain parts of the IT market. For instance, machine learning, like that Adriano does, AI. I mean, we're all witnessing the AI bubble beginning, so overall need for training, I believe, will increase, but specifically people looking for jobs will want to leverage some of these trends to move themselves into higher paid jobs or more interesting jobs, or perhaps the job market for generic coders, generic support, generic database people might slow down, so they'll want to start specializing.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Yuvarani, could I ask, from where you're standing, where you see what areas or what the need will be for training and education in the next 5 years?
Sorry, I don't really quite understand your question.
Okay, so from your personal perspective, let's answer this question slightly differently. From between now and the next 5 years, for you personally, what are your needs for training and education? What things do you think you're going to have to learn?
Okay. Now, a lot of technologies, new technologies are emerging. For example, AI is taking a lot of people are using AI now, and a lot of new technologies are emerging. So I will say that I will personally prefer to learn more technical knowledge, technical hands-on knowledge, because I've realized that a lot of companies are looking for skilled workers who are able to do technical works rather than just presenting or just speaking, and they prefer us to do problem solving technical works. So that's one of the reasons why I'm doing masters as well, so that I can learn more. And also I'm also trying to take additional certificates. That's now also a lot of people are doing that as well. Like even LinkedIn is providing a lot of certification. Yeah.
Okay, that's a great answer. And Adriano, from where you're standing, for the next 5 years, what do you think people are going to need, either yourself or people and professional journals are going to need to learn about?
Yeah, like if I get a short answer based on the current trend, it's easy to say AI skills.
Yes.
Like as John mentioned, there's
But will
this
that be
bubble.
5 years?
Yeah, but I think more in a generic sense, not just looking in the point of view of the bubble of current bubble. Now AI, a few years ago, blockchain, etc. Now the companies are starting to realize how to extract actually value of those bubbles, and there are a lot of opportunities. But I see there's still a hard work into how you make that fit into the existing software components.
Yeah.
So I believe that the training and education necessary is on platforms that accommodate these new technologies, because this is always evolving, and a good start is, I would say, learning how the cloud providers do, because they solve those problems generally faster than everyone,
Mm-hmm.
because they have a lot of resources. But still, especially corporations, even though they can buy and hire those cloud providers, you still need to integrate into our companies. You still have legacy
Yeah.
systems. So understanding how platform works in the case of AI, how like a machine learning pipeline works, and how do you scale that, how you start adopting from the cloud. So that's, I think it's a skill that is very valuable now, and it's still in the next 5 years.
I think you make quite an interesting point, because there's a difference between being a deep technological specialist who builds the technologies, and then there's a difference between people who then take those technologies and build real applications for real clients. And these are
Absolutely.
complementary skill sets. Yeah.
Andrew, if I could jump in,
Go
actually in my former company, one of the projects I worked on was a team called an operationalization team. And it was in the financial sector. And this team, although it was involved with machine learning, the actual training of the models and the math stuff was done by a separate team out in Belgium. But they separated out the two tasks, as Adriano said, and it was equally hard to then plug that machine learning model into the process flows of the organization and their existing IT systems. So there was probably more dollars spent operationalizing
Yep.
the ML part than actually building it.
Yeah, I actually personally suspect there's actually more jobs in the integration than there is in AI than actually there is in building the app, the foundation models. But I want to just move on to something else, which is a skill issue. Is a large part, when I was working in the UK, a large part of the narrative around making computer science graduates employable, and where I worked, we were quite good at it, was around soft skills. Not so much the hard technical skills, because I know you've only said you want to learn more technical stuff, which is absolutely great, and you need it. On that context, Is this still a thing? Is it, yeah, because this discussion we had in the UK about 10 years ago, but from where you're standing in Poland, is this really a consideration anymore? Are soft skills that much of an issue?
Who's first?
Any of you, dive in.
I can give my 2 cents on that. I absolutely agree that it's very much required, and from my experience of working specifically in Poland, I see that in comparison to Brazil, a market I also I have more familiarity with. I think a very small percentage of the engineers I get to know better, they're not interested much into the management side, and I see that the companies are more every time they want them to be more involved on this part, and that's a good question. I don't know the answer, but
I
sure
can tell you
agree
about the
that.
UK experience afterwards, but John, you might have wanted to say something, yes?
What I've observed is an actual decrease in the requirement that technical people have. Also impressive or adequate soft skills. Because of the legacy of COVID and remote working, really, the vast majority of IT work is remote, and teams rarely, it's very different from daily being in the office with people. It puts great barriers between people. It isolates them. So actually, it's become less important to have people who are, like friendly, communicative, social. It's not
Good.
black and white.
But it's not black. Oh no, it isn't. And every organisation is going to be different. You, Varani, yeah, soft skills from where you're working. Is it something particularly prized by your employer in the engineering sector? No. You're mute.
Sorry, no, it's not really required. Because everyone is specialized with their own task for the day. So no soft skill is required.
Yeah. This is interesting because about 15 years ago, they did a piece of research in the United Kingdom. And although you're doing in IT in the engineering sector, they think of you as an engineer, and the engineering mentality recruitment is even for the IT stuff. So if you were so the engineering sector sees we're employing graduates and people from master's degrees or bachelor's degrees as engineering and IT professionals. We want their technical skills. Soft skills are something we can work on.
Yeah.
Okay. Whereas if you go into the mainstream IT industry in the UK, outside of engineering, the non-engineering IT, so you're working for banks, or you're working in an outsourcing company, or you're working in pharma, for example, what the survey actually considered was they're both more important, because a lot of what you were doing in your job was building systems for somebody else who was not technical.
But
you were talking to the business.
Sorry, but I will say the soft skill is also useful and important to help you grow, because sometimes when we don't not just focus with technical skill, but by having soft skill, I have seen that like they will allow us to do more other tasks, and like for example, they will ask us to give training for our clients, and we get to travel and we get to train them. Even though if we are a programmer, we still get to train clients on the software, and that helps us a lot with our we can get more better job, like better. Yeah.
I mean, this is all excellent, and what I'd like to do is to start to move to the longer term, the next 10 to 15 years. But before then, I want to probably because we're going to try to match things to Poland and abroad, was in the UK, and this hasn't happened in Poland. In the UK, we used to have like a triangle in our IT industry, where there's lots of like routine programming and systems analysis and tech support jobs at the bottom, and then people worked up the pyramid towards the top, where the chief information officers and the CTOs lived. Okay. And what happened was that the UK discovered outsourcing and, of course, automation. So lots of jobs got automated. This always happens. AI is just a new automation wave. Programming copilots is just a new way of doing automation. Okay. But also it's outsourcing. Now, Poland benefits from outsourcing. Poland takes in outsourcing. It gets the jobs. Is what happened was the bottom of the pyramid just went like that. Now, if the same thing happened in Poland because Polish wages are going up, I'd say the next 10 to 15 years, from your point of view, what do you think you might need to do in order to stay ahead of that kind of transition? What's going to happen? Because new challenges are going to arise in, say, 10 or 15 years' time. The industry is going to reinvent itself. Anyone?
I will say to focus more on the skills that not everyone can do, so that when such situation happen in the coming years, you will be demanded by people will hire you because of you have a lot of high demand.
Yeah, but what skills do I have that nobody else has? That's a very, I think, a very good point.
Okay.
Adriano.
Yeah, I concur with Giovanni, and like there is the domain knowledge of the industry you're working. It doesn't work for everyone, of course. Software houses working a bit different, but when you work for a company that is mainly from a specific industry, like in my case, banking, how you do, for instance, machine learning in banking is there is some very specific way of thinking the models, and not only in the technical sense, but also regulations that you be familiarized. So this is actually make you really valuable for a skill. Like if I'm going from one bank to another, those skills of coupling
Understanding the
domain
business
knowledge.
sector that you're working in really well, and so it's not just I write code, but I write code and understand that's very good. John, yourself.
I'd start off by agreeing with Adriano again. Deep domain expertise is what will win you job interviews and keep you in employment in the face of industry change, perhaps. Actually, longer term, it's not how great a Java or whatever comes after Java programmer you are. It's like it's that experience in the organization and with the way it's making money and the products they're building. Okay. 10 to 15 years. So just to recap the question, Andrew, you're asking like how to deal with these changes in the pyramid over 10 to 15.
And also changes, and when the industry occasionally reinvents itself.
Continuous learning.
Yep.
Continuous looking forward at the horizon of that. What is the next shiny thing that's coming? And if you have to keep chipping away as a technician. You have to keep chipping away at learning something new and watching, because otherwise, if you stand still, it's the nature of IT. Well, thank goodness, as a Scrum Master, that no longer applies to me.
Or at least not so quickly.
Not so quickly.
Yes. I have to confess that before I rejoined education at the Warsaw School of Computer Science, I'd been out of it for a while. So started, and I'm working on a related project to ESSA on AI. And I do have to say, my head hurt last summer as I was catching up. And I have a PhD in the subject. So, yes, especially if you've been out a while, for example, you've taken a career break, for example, you maybe started a family, coming back in can be brutal, especially if you're in the middle of a transition period.
I think.
Right.
Oh,
Carry on.
sorry. No, I was just going to say, if you're an English speaker as well, I know this is a panel geared to English speakers, but working in Warsaw as an English speaker, it's a huge advantage given the globalization of IT work.
It's interesting you said that, because I had a conversation with a student in the student office yesterday, and we were talking about job market, etc. And he was making the observation that actually most students that study here actually are quite comfortable about communicating in English, at least speaking. And this actually, what he said was actually came to my discussions with employers in Poland, which is this: is if you're only going to speak Polish, you're probably going to end up living in the Polish government IT ecosystem.
Oh.
If you want to work for, now there's some companies like some companies that, you know, even though everyone works in English, they want you to speak Polish as well. You know, so there's but there's Polish companies want you to speak some English, even if it's just B1 English, so that you can sit in a meeting and people are discussing stuff in English with clients, because you've got overseas clients. So there's actually a rather restricted space where it is Polish only. You can, there is a space for, you know, I don't speak any other language, and yeah, you might be okay with German, for example. IT is one of these areas where even English works in Germany, whereas if you worked in mainstream engineering, trust me, you have to speak German to at least C1. So yes, language is a part of it. But coming to this in the long-term run, how do we access training? Because this comes on to the next question, which I'm going to try to change a little bit, okay, based on what you've been talking about. Because the question has its say, it said, in what way should training or education be offered to attract and be accessible to a larger, more diverse pool of learners? But if we're thinking about it in the situation of expatriate IT workers, how do we access education and training if we're working in countries where the predominant working language and the education providers generally deliver in languages other than English? Adriana, if I may start with you, what challenges have you found upskilling in Poland?
Yeah, that's a good point. Specifically to Poland, I cannot say I really faced any challenge, since I never myself I sought for a Polish specific training, so I always went for English materials, meaning mostly online materials. But I still think that Poland has a good amount of conference that, if not an education in itself, it's a starter, pointer towards education. So I think that the language barrier, how I see now, English is really hard to get learning without English. It's not just because of the material, but also cooperation. Because in Poland, you have a number of, let's say, open source projects that you could collaborate in Polish only. But if you go to English, that like explodes the amount, right? So I don't really see how you can move beyond that without English.
Great. Giovanni, you study in Poland, yes?
No.
It says Giovanni. So,
Sorry.
yeah. So you came here on a student visa and found work. Okay. So you have direct experience of learning in Poland in English.
Yes.
Yeah, and I guess you also did you study in English in Malaysia?
Yes, we use Malaysian language and English language in Malaysia.
Yep. So you can, because I was in Malaysia once and I was actually very impressed by everyone's ability to speak English, especially around matters around football and Manchester United.
Okay. Yeah.
So have you faced any particular challenges accessing education in Poland?
No, because my education in Poland is in English, and also my job is also in English because I don't have to communicate with Polish clients so far. So that's good. But I do think that my boss wants us to speak in Polish at least so that we can mingle with the co-workers. So I am learning Polish now. But I sometimes do feel a little bit not like my colleagues speak in Polish and I'm not included sometimes. But yeah, other than that, no challenges.
Okay. And John, how have you? Because you made, if I recall, you made this career transition while you were in Poland. Yes.
Yeah, I did. Could I again ask for clarification?
Go for
when
it.
you say challenges in accessing training, do you mean accessing training which is provided by academic institutions like universities?
Could be both. Could be both. Adriano, for example, made no reference. Giovanni did because she's on a master's here.
Okay.
It's basically it doesn't have to be by an academic institution. It just means, can you upskill? Or is there a danger of there being an expatriate? One question, the underlying question I'm trying to answer here is there an expat IT skills trap where you come to Europe, you get a good IT job, but you can't upskill?
I think not, because I think there is a lot you can do, online. There's been an explosion in available means to upskill and train yourself online. Things like Coursera, Udemy, enormous numbers of universities offering their courses online. For me, I upskilled through online means and self-guided study. If I'd wanted to access, say if I decided I wanted to be a data scientist, however, that would be quite different, because then it would have been a challenge if I wanted to go back to university and do like a 3-year course. I would have basically had to find somewhere in Warsaw that taught in English, or do it entirely remotely, which would have been a great challenge. And at that point, I was a single bachelor. I imagine for people who have commitments, like family commitments, perhaps who have other jobs they still need to be doing. People who, are from a diverse range of backgrounds. Let's say a mother who's in her late 40s who decides she wants to do a U-turn and become a software tester. She still has to look after children. Then it starts to be like challenging for her. So if training institutions are able to provide content, which is on demand, pre-recorded lectures, more flexibility in seminar times, flexibility in access to lecturers, then it becomes more accessible.
Yep, great. Because I think this is. I mean, you're correct. I think you're correct. Expatriates do have the option of trying to get a qualification from outside. If it's an academic qualification, there could be problems with recognition. But if it's within Europe, and I mean Europe by the widest means, including the bits of Europe that are not in the EU, that is not a problem. You can study online, say with the Open University in the UK, and then get the OU diploma, and that will be fine. But trying to access local is interesting, because I know the president's listening in on the call, but we've had conversations about this, and the mark, you have the bachelor's degrees, and these are normally not what people come in to do unless they really want to move into Poland and get a job. Then you've got master's degrees, and a lot of the people who are doing masters here at the Warsaw School of Computer Science and English, a lot of them already work here, which is great. makes the classes much more interesting to teach, I can tell you. But yeah, they are 2-year-long courses. So there's a certain point in your career where doing a 2-year master's while you're working is a suitable path. But sometimes you don't want the short certification. You do want a reasonably extended course of study, say 6 to 9 months, but just focused on that little bit of area that's missing.
Modular. You would want
modular, or of course. Now, actually, such things exist in Polish higher education. They're called post-diploma courses, but they're almost all in Polish.
Probably,
Because,
if there's an ability to pause them as well, and come back to them.
Yeah, well, normally the way they work in Poland is they're not. You just come in at weekends for say 6 months. Okay. For example, but right now they are generally in Polish because the market's for Poles, and although even in IT Poles are comfortable with English, they still prefer to be assessed in Polish. Because Poles are quite good at communicating in English in IT, in my experience, but they're less confident is generating in IT, and they wouldn't want to bet their university exam grade on their knowledge of English, even if we would actually say they probably would be okay. So they are transition where there's parts of the training landscape in Poland which are not accessible to foreigners, and it'll be the same in Germany. There's lots of good courses by Hochschule, but they'll be in German, especially the short stuff. Okay, so outside business may be an exception here. Business might be an exception here, but in IT it's not so much. Okay, now coming to this, because I want to make that point, because I want to transition on to the next point, which is around mobility. One of the narratives and discourses in the European Union is to actually have people move freely across borders, especially have the talent be available where it is, so that you could be working in Ljubljana and your IT project managers from Belgium and your head of dev is Polish, for example. Okay. Now, there's 2 questions. Is what, from where you're standing as foreign IT workers, could be done to make this easier? And especially, what challenges do you actually face, working in a kind of cross-border inside of the EU? Giovanni, you work for a German employer, yes?
Yes.
So how is it working? Are there any barriers? Can you just go across to Germany and...
No, I can't just go to Germany, because then they will only allow us to come if there's a need for us to come, or if there's any meeting, or if they're providing any training. Other than that, I can't go to the branch. Yeah.
So you can't habitually work in Germany. You can't habitually do your job in Germany. But if there was a meeting, that's fine.
Yeah, it's like I was invited to Hanover last year for a week for a presentation. So that's when we were able to go, because they will have to prepare a meeting room for us to meet and work. So we can't just go there.
Okay. Adriano, have you experienced any barriers, because banking companies are international, yes, of working across borders?
Yeah, I think that companies differ, but I think that Poland, it's still, lots of companies fall in this situation where they see Poland as a cheaper source of labor for the same quality, and which is, it's fine. It's a force of the market, so you have to use it smart towards you. But I think, in a personal sense, you need to, I think a good challenge is to also present yourself as not only the cheaper alternative, but also like the same level. I think that's a challenge that working specifically in Poland or countries where the average salary is lower than the Western part of Europe, it's a challenge to face.
That's a very good point, because as you probably observed over the last 5 years, Poland is not so cheap anymore, and wages are not so low anymore. Wages have gone up. If you're Polish, your wages have gone up a lot. So with that thought,
absolutely.
So with that thought, carry on. You just want to add something?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That Poland salaries are very good, as John mentioned, right? That if you are having like a IT job working in Warsaw, even though an engineer in Warsaw would make an absolute value less than an engineer in, I don't know, Germany, you still have a really good quality of life for the money you make. Yeah, and I think Poland's using smartly this position of having a so-called cheaper labor.
John, do you have anything to add on these points?
Regarding your main question, challenges cross-border, I think there are few, with the nature of EU citizenship. If you're an EU citizen, moving around to working in different countries is easy. But if you're not, then yeah, I mean, we have people who sometimes get seconded for a time to, say, for example, from India to Warsaw to work for a short period of time in Warsaw, but then perhaps there's a project meeting in Germany or the UK, and then they have to go through a visa process and or to go to France, and that's a real pain. Regarding what Adriano said, Poland really is not cheap anymore. I did a salary comparison myself. I mean, this is just me. I don't represent anyone, but I can see salaries in Warsaw for developers are roughly the same as in second-tier British cities. So not London, but outside of.
So Newcastle, for example.
Yeah, they really are, or actually slightly better.
Yeah.
Which is something I think the Poles and the British would never have expected. The difference is, though, that there's been so much more culling of developers in Britain due to the waves of outsourcing, that those developers in Newcastle probably work a lot more hungrily and efficiently than some of the Poles who perhaps all they've ever known are the good times. Many people in my company, walked out of their uni straight into graduate jobs on high salaries before COVID. Very high salaries, perhaps their parents earned 6,000 a month and they were starting on 12,000. Enormous salaries for them. I mean, that they got to experience the kind of times that have not been seen in England since the late 90s. But it's over. Sorry.
Yeah. I think there's an important point here where the skills challenges, and I don't think we can rely on employers to necessarily to do this. Is that what will happen is that the bottom of the Polish market, I think, will go like this. Now, any Polish businesses are Polish IT professionals who are moving up the value chain. They'll be fine.
Sharpen up.
But same as happened in the UK, don't be stuck at the bottom. That's not a comfortable place to be, and it will be a horrible place to be very soon.
Yeah, diversify, sharpen up.
Yeah, and learn new skills.
Exactly.
But what you're saying, that even as an expat IT worker, there are still options, and you're still able to upskill.
Oh yes, very much so.
Yep. Okay. Now, just to finish off the session, Is there anything else that you'd like to actually add? Or is there anything that's maybe surprising, or any trends you want to highlight, or something which I've forgotten to ask about, but you actually think we really should mention?
In terms of training and learning, you mean?
Yes.
I would say a
Giovanni?
lot of people now are taking short certificates because I use my LinkedIn every day, and I've been watching people trying to get a lot of new certificates, short courses, trying to improve their self, and I've been trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And also this new trend, which is AI. Now you can create your own program using the AI as well. Like you can make your own calculator using AI for your own purposes. So that is also a new trend now that I've been seeing, which I'm also going to try for myself. So I just recently bought AI to write my own coding codes just to see how the system
Copilots,
works.
yes.
Yeah. So if, let's say, my job, if they ask me to do something, then I can make my own ChatGPT AI and try to see how accurate it's giving the results.
Okay. John?
Yeah, I'd like to say something. You know, what I think would be an important consideration for people looking to train, more so for people looking to get into the IT industry, is at the start, you need high quality training, not cut price Udemy courses with video lectures. And if you're going to a maths heavy discipline or data science or algorithmic stuff, like you want to be a developer, getting that first year done in an academic context rigorously with group seminars and a seminar leader that you can approach personally and do guided structured work is essential, because if you've never been a programmer or a technician, it is overwhelming. And if you try and go from zero to Java developer just through Udemy, unless you're extremely naturally gifted, it will be very frustrating. And you probably will end up with a whole lot of dirty tricks and habits that are not common in industry. So get those first years done in a more academic, traditional context. And then when you're in the later stages of your career, like we are, then you can consider other alternative means of training or self-guided stuff more so.
Okay. Anything else, Adriana? Closing
Yeah,
remarks?
just following up a bit with John. Yeah, I think that the interaction that a proper training gives you, like a academic training gives you, it's really hard to bridge that with self-learning. Like
Yeah.
there's a something in people training together that is kind of magical.
Yeah, the class to an extent teaches itself. It's not just the interaction between the student and the lecturer, it's the interaction with the system itself. Educate, we talk about higher education system, and there's a reason for that. It's a system. And like what happened in the UK after the dot-com crash, the departments that did okay and carried on working were those who actually provided that value, because students do talk to each other, and students' choices of educational path are heavily influenced by people who've studied before. Because let's put it this way, if you're especially if you are in a new country, and we can see this in London, how do you know where to study? You ask somebody in your own community. So the university I used to work at, in London, we had a lot of trade from the Anglo-Asian community in there, because what happened was the 17-year-old prospective student asked his uncle, "Hi, Sanjeev, how did you get that nice job working for Logica?" And he said, "I studied business computing systems at City University." And then people do that. So these paths are very important, and universities, this has always been the case, that quality is the only sustainable model, business model for any education, training provider or not. Training providers are a bit more transitory, but if you're doing the long-term type of education that you're talking about, people know if you're not doing a good job. and the students will eventually vote for their feet when the market goes south. So so anyway, I'd like to thank you all, okay, because this has been really good.
If I may add another interesting
Go for it.
trend that I see happening, and I think it's a good trend, is like I think it's very important in the IT job market that you build your own brand, right? Like you present yourself in a unique way. And I think that doesn't need to start from your professional experience. It can start while still studying, like build your GitHub profile, your LinkedIn, start producing, like showing up to the world what you're doing. It can start early. And I think it's very healthy for students taking this path.
That's actually a good point to end on, because one of the experiences that happened in the UK after the dot-com crash, the reason why students were failing to get work, even during the recovery, was not because they weren't able to do the work. It was because they were really poor at articulating their value. And that might be a message, I think, from people abroad to maybe the local market in Poland, where things will get, the good times that you said have ended, and the times where you will need to clearly articulate your value are going to start.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay, so thanks everyone, and this is and I'd like to thank you all for this, because the insights will be there, as I said. So I'm going to thank you all, and I'm going to then switch off the camera at that point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.